Next we're going to look at fleeing from the abomination. So if you were in downtown Dallas or someplace and you saw the abomination, you would need to flee. But
well, when you
hey,
go there, you pretty much do.
what is an abomination? Well, lots of things are an abomination, right? So, I mean, it's like, what can you be more specific, Jesus? What do you mean, the abomination, right? So, before a person can flee from the abomination, they must know what it is, right? So, then we've got to listen to what Jesus says about fleeing, and he warns people to flee to the mountains so that they don't die in the Jerusalem battle that's coming, or end up in prison camps for years, right? And World War II showed us a lot of Jews in prison camps, you know, in a horrible, horrible situation. And Jesus is saying, that was a forerunner, it's coming again. But I've got a merciful solution for anybody in the area at the time of the abomination. Matthew 24:15. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, where's the holy place? People will argue that all day long and all night. But the Temple Mount was built by Solomon as a huge foundation, table rock mountain sort of thing, on which to build the temple. So the temple, the holy place, was built on the Temple Mount, the big raised platform. So that's the holy place, right? Now precisely where the holy place is, you can still argue about. But it's got to be up on top of that Temple Mount, where right now the Muslims will not allow Jews to go up there and worship, right? Although there's some talk of that changing, right? And there are two mosques up there. There's the Dome of the Rock Mosque, and then there's the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So to Muslims, that's the third most holy place in all of Muslim Islam, and there are 2 billion with a B, Muslims on the planet. And you can get them really angry really quick. So be careful what you say, and don't start drawing any cartoons about Muhammad, because that's very likely to get you killed. We had buildings burning and all sorts of things happened when somebody did that years back, and pretty much everybody learned don't draw cartoons of Muhammad. And but anyhow. So don't get them riled up. Jesus warns people to flee to the mountains, right? So they don't end up in prison camps or dead. In verse 16, let those who are in Judea. And I would suggest to you that now means Israel, the nation of Israel, right? Flee to the mountains. So if you're in Judea when this happens, then Jesus says, get out of town quickly, right? Now Luke records this, which is a little different. In Luke 21:20, says, but when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, you look at the Greek there, it's army encampments. It's like when an army moves to a location, they begin to set up an encampment. It's not when they drive a tank over the hill and point the turret at your house. It's like when the army moves in, they have to have latrines. Somebody's got to dig latrines, and they put up tents, and they've got to have a mess tent, and then, you know, so how long does it take to set up a small army encampment? Anybody want to guess?
Gary, or no?
Okay.
Well, it takes a little while to do that.
Couple of weeks?
No, not that long,
A
Bob.
week?
Maybe.
Okay, so maybe a week, right? Okay, so Luke gives us a slightly different view of this. He says, when you see armies setting up encampment, right, know for certainty that the desolation, the ruin, the laying waste of Jerusalem is near. Then let those who are in Judea, not just in Jerusalem, right, flee to the mountains. So he's still saying flee to the mountains, only Luke is saying you've got, when you see them beginning to set up encampments, you know, gather yourself together, get your plan going, and get up into the mountains. In Matthew's case and in Mark's case, it says on the day the sacrifices are stopped, which is the same day as the abomination is set up in the holy place, you can't go into your house to pack a bag. When you see it on your cell phone, because Jesus couldn't say cell phone because nobody knew what cell phone was until recently, right? Or when you hear it on your radio, right? Or you see it on your TV, right? Then he says, don't go into your house. The first thing you want to do is go into your house and pack a bag. Get a sleeping bag, because you're going to go into the mountains, right? He says, don't go into your house, or else it may be too late. Then he says that if you're in the field working, and a lot of Israeli people are in the fields working, right? He says, and you've put your cloak on a fence post so you can, you can work in your, right, in your shirt sleeve sort of thing, right? And the cloak happens to be in the opposite direction to where you're going to flee to the mountain. You need that cloak to go to the mountain, because it's going to be cold in the mountain. He says, don't go that way to get your cloak and come back this way to go to the mountain. Leave the cloak where it is and go straight to the mountain. He's saying you've got like an hour and a half to get out of town, right? Whereas Luke wasn't saying that. Luke doesn't refer to that because he already knows that Matthew and Mark have already written that. And so Luke is giving us information which is earlier information. There's nothing in Luke that says when you see the encampments of the soldiers that you can't go into your house and pack a bag. There's nothing there. So presumably you can. It's only on that last day that you can't go into your house. It's only on that last day that you can't go across the field and get the robe and carry it back with you, right? So then Luke goes on and says, and let not those who are, this is poorly translated, those who are in the country, which is better translated the countries, plural, enter there. Okay, if we could get a high view of the airports in Israel, every couple of hours planes land from America bringing tourists, landing them in Israel, and they get the tour, they get on the tour buses, and they go all over Israel, and they see all the ancient artifacts, and they see the Temple Mount, and they see the Golgotha, and then I don't know how many a year, but there's got to be, what, Gary, hundreds of thousands of people, Americans? It's not like 10 people a year. It's like a major tourist attraction. In fact, Israel survives partly on their tourist business, right? Gary can tell you some good stories. You don't want to get on a bus, and when the Israeli army come on to inspect the people on the bus, you do not want to say the word bomb. Well, that's going to ruin the rest of your day and the bus trip and everything. Okay, question. How many of you think that a lot of Americans travel to Israel, to Jerusalem and Israel every year? How many of you believe that to be true? Okay, most of you. All right, next question. Will this amount of tourist travel increase or decrease when the morning and evening sacrifices begin?
Increase.
Increase, right? Now, they just recently discovered an underground road where from the pool of Siloam that led up to the temple. And it's almost in mint condition. A sewer pipe broke somewhere, and they sent some guys down underneath, and they discovered this underground, tunnel thing with the road. And it's like, oh, Jesus would have walked, on this road. It's not all that wide, and this is where Jesus walked. He would have walked. And so a lot of people go because they want to walk where Jesus walked. Mm-hmm. And so
stand where he stood.
And stand where he stood and get baptized where he got baptized and stuff like that, right? So when the morning and evening sacrifices actually do begin, and they've got everything ready, they're waiting for permission from the government, which they're not going to get until after the war. After the war is over, they will, like we did in 9/11. If you remember 9/12, some of you might remember. On 9/12, they had on TV, they had Washington politicians all standing together singing gospel songs. On 9/10, You couldn't have dragged them with wild horses to sing gospel songs. It's like, we don't need God the way what we're doing. And then we got attacked, and then 3 buildings fell down, and the next day, God bless America, flags flying on cars, and the Washington folk they're not unapologetically now, they're singing gospel songs. Like, what on earth happened? Well, you know, they tried to destroy the financial district of America, right? And so people change. So when the morning and evening sacrifices begin, I believe there's going to be a great magnetic draw for Americans to go see a morning or evening sacrifice, and it's going to smell great. What's it going to smell like? Barbecue! Doesn't barbecue smell good? Right? We all go, ew, killing animals and burning them. That's barbecue! It's going to have a sweet savor. And then the Americans could fly back to here and they could say, yes, I saw the morning sacrifice. Well, that was too early in the morning. I went to the evening one. And then I went to the bar. After the evening sacrifice, I went down to the bars. You know, right? But it's going to be a great, incredible magnet to draw people to go and be there, right? And what did we read from Luke? He said, when you see the armies encamping, don't leave another country and come into Israel. So Jesus is laying the groundwork of when the morning and evening sacrifices begin. Wise people will have 2 choices. Get the first plane there, look at it real quick, and grab a plane and get out of there quick, right? Long before the armies get to start encamping around Jerusalem, right? And the other choice is don't go. It's not all that important. It's an ancient thing. It's Old Testament, and God gave us the New Testament sacrifice of Jesus Christ, and so the Old Testament sacrifices don't count. Jesus is our sacrifice. Okay, so notice Luke's is different. Matthew says 24:16, let those in Judea flee to the mountain. Let not those who are on the housetop go down into the house and take anything. This is the moment you must start leaving right away as soon as you hear. Matthew says, on the abomination day, go quickly to the mountains. All right, Luke says, see the soldiers setting up camp and start leaving for the mountains. That would be my choice. You know, I would want to go into my house and pack my pajamas or something, you know, and get a sandwich and a cooler and a sleeping bag, whatever. Daniel makes it clear that when the sacrifices are stopped, the abomination will be set up on the same day. So you don't have to be a Greek scholar or a great scientist to know exactly what the abomination is. All you have to know is the day the morning and evening sacrifices are stopped by the abomination being set up. That's what it is. It is what it is. It's what stopped the morning and evening sacrifices. So, you know, you can postulate and guess and do whatever you want to do, but on the day that it is set up, it shuts down the morning and evening sacrifices. And really what you need to know is what day it is. It's the stopping day and the beginning day, right? So Daniel makes it clear when he says the sacrifices are stopped, it's the same day. Daniel 11:31, the forces shall be mustered by him, the beast power, the third king of the north, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress, the sanctuary, God's sanctuary, the holy place, and they shall take away the daily sacrifices and place there the abomination of desolation. So it all happens at one moment, right? And you could get some scientist or some theologian somewhere that says, well, it doesn't exactly say it's the same day. But then you look at Daniel 12:11, and it says, from the time the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So you can't have one event happen a day later than the other event. They both happen on the same day, because then we're told it's 1,290 days to the end. So it's like they both happen on the same day, and that's the fuller understanding. So if thousands and thousands of Jesus followers flock to Jerusalem to involve themselves in the sacrifices, they will need to watch for soldiers setting up camps. Right? But most people don't look this deeply into Scripture. And most people are attracted by the shiny object. Right? And so the Baptists, like when the governor of Arkansas, right? What's his name? Ex-governor. Huckabee. Every time Huckabee's on TV, he somehow gets a way of sliding in that he's been to Jerusalem like 149 times, or a lot, right? Anyhow, and it's like, going to Jerusalem is like better than anything, right? And so when this has to happen, people are going to go, ooh, I got to go and see the morning and evening sacrifices, right? And Jesus has anticipated this from thousands of years ago, and he says, if you're a believer in me and you're reading your scriptures and you want to do what I tell you to do, especially when it concerns saving your life or keeping you out of a prison camp for 3.5 years, then pay close attention to what I've been telling you, So it's when the battle for Jerusalem will be getting very close. When the encampment of the soldiers is happening, the battle for Jerusalem is getting very close. Now, before that battle, under the beast power, there will be an earlier battle, World War III, where Israel gets saved and a whole bunch of Arab nations get captured. And they start the morning and evening sacrifices, and they'll be saying, peace, peace. Right? But shortly thereafter comes the beast power, who makes friends with Israel, and then brings his armies in close to protect the Israeli people, right? And then he sets himself up as the abomination, the abominable person, right? We'll study it sometime. It's really, abominable means disgusting, right? And then desolation means you destroy things. And if you look closely in Daniel, it says the disgusting person who's going to destroy Jerusalem is the long form of the simple abomination of desolation. And the translators didn't bother to dig through Daniel to see what it was all about. So Jesus in his mercy wants his people to escape before the battle begins. He doesn't want to see us slaughtered, or his people, or those followers, right? Verse 22 of Luke 21, these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Verse 24, and they will fall by the edge of the sword. They're going to die in battle. And they will be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. We're told that's 3.5 years. There will be a time for the last 3.5 years before Jesus comes down to planet Earth when there is no nation of Israel. It's not there. It's gone. Now the topography and the city's still there, but it's being trampled by Gentiles. So to imagine that there is no more Israel for 3.5 years is mind-boggling. How can that be? Right? Especially since in the World War III that happens before, Israel gets saved. It's like, oh, goody, we're saved. It's like Britain got saved in World War II. Well, what if 6 months later Britain got destroyed again? Right? It's like, what's going on here? But this is where, if you're not paying close attention to biblical prophecy and what God as Jesus is telling us, you miss the critical clues. So God's word indicates the time period when the sacrifices are likely to begin. Daniel verse 11:41, he shall enter the glorious land Israel, and many nations, many countries shall be overthrown. He'll stretch out his hand against the countries, and Egypt will not escape. Verse 43 of Daniel 11. He shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver and all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and Ethiopians as well. Jesus wants his people to know and to instruct other people for their own safety. Now, if you know somebody, right, when this happens, and they rush up to you and say, oh, I'm flying to Israel next week. And say, why? Because of the morning and evening sacrifices. Oh, you do know not to be there when they're shut off, right? Oh, I'm not worried about that. Well, Jesus is worried about it, and here's a couple of scriptures you might want to study on the plane flying to Israel, right? Right? Because if you stay too long, oh yeah, we're going to stay 3 months. I wouldn't do that, and point out to what Jesus has been warning people, right? So Revelation 1:1 is the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants things that must shortly, speedily take place. Whole book of Revelation is to show us how it's going to be. He wants his people to understand how it's going to be. If we understand the danger involved in going to Jerusalem for the morning and evening sacrifices, we can warn people to be prepared to leave quickly, right? And I used to think, well, I'm an Australian boy, there's no way on God's green earth that I'm ever going to end up in Jerusalem during the sacrifices, right? Well, then, I never dreamed I'd be in America either. And here I am, and I could get arrested, for preaching heresy against Israel, and they could take me over there and put me in front of their Supreme Court or something, and I'd be worried about, have the sacrifices started yet? What is the matter with that guy? He's all worried about them starting, Anyhow, Israel will have been saved from the onslaught of many Middle Eastern nations, World War III, and the war will appear to be over, and Israel will be deemed to be a safe place for tourists again, right? And the morning and evening sacrifices will begin, and people will get all excited and want to go spend their tourist dollar looking at this ancient, holy barbecue thing, right? And so, boy, that smells so good. Is there a barbecue shop around here somewhere? and knowing the Jews, they'll probably sell you some of it. But anyhow, with this Bible understanding, we will be able to help Americans avoid dying in the Jerusalem battle that is certain to come, right? When the abomination person makes Israel desolate.